Hello, everyone. I'm back here at Cave Comics with Jerry Ordway. Jerry, how's it going today?
It's going really good, really well. Sorry, early in the morning for me because I'm a late night guy.
Gotcha. So, just recently, this past week, officially on Blu-ray and on digital, they released the Reign of the Superman Blu-ray, which was the follow-up to last year's animated Death of Superman.
Right.
You got to not only go to the premiere, but got to talk to the cast. How was that?
It was really fun. I mean, I kind of invited myself because I saw that it was going to happen on Twitter, and I knew the guy who was running the publicity for it. So I, I had already seen the movie, but it was fun to see it like it was a really nice presentation. When you see it on the big screen, it's not meant for the big screen, but it looked good, and the sound was really good, and it was kind of a bonus then, I was there at the, Mitch Halleck of Terrificon. He and I went, he drove, and we got to, there's like a room with just a rope and people interviewing, like in a line. So all the actors, the voice actors were there, most of them. And I got to interact with the guy who did the voice of Bibbo and the Eradicator, and he was really good. He was fun. It was fun before and then the movie. And then we had the added bonus of being invited to go out to dinner with that group.
Awesome.
So we had a little more, kind of downtime where you're not. I mean, these guys are used to doing interviews, and they're kind of like on. So it was kind of fun to unwind after this and just have a relaxing meal,
Yeah.
But it was fun. Everybody was into it. One of the things that was funny about it, I guess an anecdotal kind of thing, is that Tony Todd, who did the Candyman, he does horror stuff in it. He's a big guy too. All these guys were really tall, actually. The guy who did the voice of Cyborg Superman, Patrick Fabian, is on Better Call Saul. Plays the lawyer, and he was my height. Everybody else was my height or taller. It was just funny. I said here you got all these people with superheroic stature, and it's a cartoon. No one knows. But Tony Todd had come by and he said, I'm really lucky to be in this because, in the comic it would have been Mongol.
Yeah.
And we're like, wow, Tony did his homework. It was kind of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, Tony was actually the first guy I've ever interviewed at
cool.
the Terrificon a few years ago. And seeing someone that height, but one of the nicest guys, as I'm sure you noticed. And hearing him play Darkseid, that was cool because, like you said, they changed it from Mongol. What were your thoughts on the different takes they did from the comic book?
Well, I mean, it's a big storyline. There's like 12 plus issues, I guess. And, you need to kind of boil it down. The other thing is, I think they specifically targeted to Darkseid because after the Death of Superman, Jurgens had done the Doomsday stuff, and there was a Doomsday annual, I guess in 94 or something, 95, where they told the origin kind of tied to Darkseid. So that wasn't originally part of the story. Mm-hmm. So organically it makes sense that they would go, okay, well, if it's tied to Darkseid, we don't have to introduce Mongol. Mm-hmm. They've already introduced Darkseid in their DC movies, so it kind of it's like their DC movie shared universe.
Definitely.
So it made organic sense, and it was good. I like I said, when I saw it second time, I thought it was, really well done, but it had the right emotional highs and lows. When if anybody hasn't read the comics, I don't want to spoil too much.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And Jerry, now recently, one of your latest projects was the DC Primal Age Funko creation.
Right.
What was it like to work with Funko and design the comics for them?
Well, it was kind of fun. I like the idea, the concept of it was fun. I actually had been asked right before New York Con, and then while I was at New York Con, somebody had one of the, I guess, a special New York Con exclusive toy. It was a Mr. Freeze or something.
Oh, cool.
And I went, wait, how do you know about this? So I was kind of surprised that it was actually out. Toys were out. But the concept, if anybody doesn't know, is the comics are like ended line is like a lost 1980s toy line. So it's visually the toys are almost molded like the old He-Man and Warlord toys from the 80s. So the concept of the comic was also, like a found, these are comics that we're now reprinting that were done back in the 80s or whatever. So it was kind of fun. It's set in a kind of a sword and sorcery, more, that type of medieval world. And you don't really have to worry about too much continuity, which was fun. So I wrote and drew a Wonder Woman story. And we got to introduce a character that, if the line is successful, may be a Funko toy.
Awesome. And
then I wrote a Joker one that was drawn by... actually, this is kind of funny when I think about it, because it was... I don't know if you remember the Justice League from the 80s when they revamped it and they added Vibe and Gypsy.
Yeah.
Well, Chuck Patton had been the artist at that time, and so Chuck actually drew the Joker story,
cool.
And Carl Kiesel inked it, and it was just really fun. Again, the main story was by Marv Wolfman, and it's more, I guess, tying in whatever their lore that their premise, their main premise. So I didn't have to really address anything. It was fun to do kind of two standalone stories, but it was really fun to draw and write. And just to write stuff, because I don't get that opportunity a lot, and I always liked it. It's fun to work and see what other people draw when based on your scripts too, which is fun. But those are supposed to be available at Target.
Gotcha.
But I've heard reports that a lot of Targets don't have them, or people are not finding them, so it's a little frustrating because I'm proud of it.
Definitely,
but, I don't know why the rollouts of these things, it makes you appreciate comic stores.
Absolutely.
Because at least you can order something, and this is similar to the Walmart.
Oh, yeah, I was just about to bring
that
up.
I always think of it as, when I was a kid, you'd have to go to as many newsstand or potential comic book places to find whatever. There was always something that didn't make it on the main newsstand or wherever you bought comics at. There were, I remember looking for... I remember the one specifically was an issue of Kirby's Forever People that just did not hit anywhere in Milwaukee when I was a kid. And I took my bike in the winter or whatever. I was on my bike riding, within a 20-mile radius, basically trying to find some, because that was how distribution was, So this is what that reminds me of. It's like people having to go, except nowadays you have eBay.
Yeah.
Which is the added incentive. Unfortunately, if someone finds it, they'll probably buy 10 copies and then put them up on eBay.
Yep.
So, that's a little unfortunate, but I guess part of it fuels interest in it as well. So it's like a negative and a positive to a degree.
Definitely.
Like, would people care as much if the Walmart books weren't somehow hard to get? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's nice to see an interest of people trying to hunt them down, and the names both Target and Walmart has brought in the work on them. They've they're not messing around. They've brought in Tom King, I believe, Dan Jurgens, and just it's promising. With how digital's coming along, it's shows hope that hard copies will remain relevant and people will enjoy them.
You'd hope so.
Yeah.
But I do think the fact that they're using name talent on the books, they're not just reprints, is good. But again, from the comic store perspective, you have people searching for the books and then maybe buying them up and reselling them. Well, the whole point of this promotion, or most of these promotions, is to reach new readers. So in a way, it's nice that the comic store fans want the books. But again, by turning it into a speculator kind of thing, it doesn't really address the issue of there's Walmarts in areas where there aren't comic stores, or there's Targets in areas. That whole point is that we're giving them original content, but it's also so that new readers can maybe find these things and go, oh, I'm going to go look for a comic store to buy other stuff. It's like an end run around it when it becomes a more of a mad scramble from a collector point of view.
Yeah.
Because, some kid, discovering a book is how probably all of us kind of got into comics.
Absolutely.
You kind of accidentally, or somebody takes you somewhere and you find this and you go, oh my God, how did I live before without Spider-Man or without, you know what I mean? That's the joy of comics.
Definitely. And talking with projects that you're currently working on, you mentioned to me that you're working on a cover of Archie coming up.
Archie 1941, we're basically, it's like a reimagining Archie in that era, even though he was in that era in the original comics. There, I think it's 5 issues, and I did the cover for the last one, an alternate cover, which was a takeoff on a Superman cover that I'd done with him saluting the flag. So it was kind of fun. So I think that's coming out soon. I'm not sure of the scheduling, but it probably within the next month or so.
Cool. And have you been able to read any of the current comics coming out, or have you been busy working on projects yourself?
I read stuff. I unfortunately stuff piles up because I think, well, I'll read 5 issues in a row of something, and then by the time, I wind up sorting through my books, and it's like, why is issue 2 not in here? It's like, oh, I guess I must have read it on the fly without, Sometimes you just pick up a book and you want to read it. But I have been reading. I like I think I probably even mentioned it. Probably anybody I talk to is I like the Terrifics. I think that's been a really fun book from DC. But unfortunately, it's had probably 5 different artists on 10 or 12 issues. It's a little difficult to, from a art fan like myself. I think it would be nice to see one person do a run on a book.
Definitely.
The same is true of Shazam, the new Shazam book. I was, a big fan of Dale Eaglesham. We'd worked on All-Star on JSA back maybe 10 years or so with Jeff Johns. And I was, I read the first issue of Shazam, and I thought, oh, this kind of course corrects what the previous New 52 things have felt like a little dark to me. And this felt a little more fun, which I liked, because I do think, all dark is no good, all fun is no good. You need that blend. And then when the second issue came out, I was like, wait, how come there's a different artist? Like, how can you have a different artist on the second issue of a book? Usually you plan ahead. Yeah. And I wouldn't blame the artist necessarily. I mean, they may have started it really late, whatever. But yeah, unfortunately, knowing a little bit of the background, it takes a little bit out of just grabbing something and reading it and enjoying it. Yeah, yeah. Because you think, why does this happen? You would never launch a book in the old days without having a little bit of lead time. Yeah. And you can, certainly lose your lead time after 3 or 4 months, but you didn't have a fill-in after issue 2. That's new territory to me, But things are different. Yeah. I also think maybe Jeff Johns wears a lot of hats at DC. Oh yeah. And that maybe it's we need to get a Shazam book up because the movie's coming out, and Jeff is the guy to do it. Yeah. But everybody's got limits on their time, so I mean I don't know any of the ins and outs of it. But I read that. I've been reading. Mitch Halleck had recommended the Indestructible Hulk, so I picked up a bunch of those, but I haven't read them yet. The one thing I did read, I didn't mean to actually. There's a book that Tomorrow's did called Stuff Said, that is almost like a timeline of Stan Lee taking credit for all this stuff versus Jack Kirby versus Steve Ditko, but it's mostly Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and it's told through quotes from organized in chronological order, including Stan Lee's own words from the Marvel bullpen comments and from letters pages from books as early as they started letters pages. So in the early 60s, Stan would say, Jack did this, or Steve did this. So it's a really fascinating thing. I picked it up to, start paging through it, and I started reading it, and next thing you know, it's 5 hours later. And all it does is kind of put a timeline to everything, but it doesn't take anything away from Stan Lee. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? To be certainly was the voice of Marvel, but over the years, he's perceived as the guy who did everything, because he told everybody, I did everything, So, but that was a really good book. Anybody who's interested in any of that history, I thought a very fair assessment. It didn't trash anybody. It just basically used their own words to support each of their arguments, And again, it was fascinating to do it from the point of pulling old letter page comments that, Stan had made in the letter columns and early interviews and stuff. So it's called Stuff Set. It's from Tomorrow's. It's actually like a double-sized issue of the Kirby Collector, which I always buy anyways. But definitely worth a read.
Cool.
You know.
Awesome. And you mentioned Shazam, and in a few months the Shazam movie is going to be coming out. What are your thoughts prior to that movie coming out?
I'm excited. You know, I've seen the trailers. A couple teasers have been really fun. I mean, I think from what I've seen, it looks like it has the elements that I would like to see in a Shazam movie. But, I mean, we won't know until we see it.
Cool. And looking ahead, to close it off, as always, Terrificon coming this August. You'll be there. What are your thoughts going to a new Terrificon this year?
Oh, it's always fun, and then it's funny because the way he runs it towards the end of, I guess it's early August this year. It's kind of a fun summer thing. For me, it's nicely spaced because I've been the last couple of years I've been doing Heroes Con in June, and then Mitch's show, and then I'll do Baltimore. And Baltimore is I moved to October now, which is good. So I mean, it's nice to have like a month in between to recuperate, because you always you tend to get too little sleep and work too many hours at the table. So it's nice to have some rest in between, or just to get deadlines done. But it's like I said, I think Mitch does a good show.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I was going to mention is I think when people, if you plan ahead for shows, is usually like with something like I said, Terrificon's unusual in that it's in an enclosed environment. The nice thing is you don't have to leave the place for 3-4 days, because there's food, there's all kinds of things to do in the, within the facility itself. But I think a lot of times people, when you go to a show, the one thing you hope that you're going to find comics, you know what I mean? And that's the one thing that's good about
definitely
shows like Heroes and Mitch's show in Baltimore, is that you go and it's focused on the comics. So you're, you can search through boxes.
Yeah.
And people got sales, whatever. It's it kind of has a good, fun, collectible, nerdy vibe to it, which I like.
Definitely. Yeah, you could really space each day for one particular thing.
Yeah.
Shopping, getting your autographs, meeting the artists and actors, and then if you do this kind of thing, I know Sunday morning is like the best time to do this, because people aren't there right when it opens, and it's not as busy, so you can get a lot of your interviews out the way.
And
so
you get people who are really sleepy, but
yeah, just bring them coffee.
Right. But no, what you'd mentioned about the like with a lot of shows like New York, they're very well structured, but I think you have limited times. Like if you're going to get someone's autograph, they're there from this to this, and you kind of, if it's a celebrity, whatever, you have to be there. At Mitch's show, these people generally are there all like 3 days, and that gives you more of a window. So if you're waiting online for one guy, you're not going to necessarily lose out on somebody else.
Yeah.
But at Baltimore, I'd gotten to meet Zachary Levi, and it was kind of nice because it was on I think it was a Saturday or of the show, Friday of the show, and I got to talk to him a little bit. He was super nice, and then I told him I was going to ask him what if he'd seen Power of Shazam, and he said no, Jeff didn't give me those, and I was like, oh well, I'll get you a copy of the hardcover. So he was going to be in New York, so I went pretty much for that reason. So I went and I made my way through the artist signing area, and I feel guilty interrupting someone's line, but I knew he was be finished and was going to be gone in like 10 minutes. So I gave him his hardcover and the sketch, and we had fun. We had a couple photo opportunities, and it's kind of, to me, it's nice. I think he's been through all the fan stuff before, by virtue of being in the Thor movies.
Yeah, that's right.
Also, from Chuck playing the big nerd, so he was really good with everybody. He was good with the fans. I think that's the difference with like even with these, back to Reign of Supermen, every one of the actors was like super good, and they were very accessible. during that little Q&A, and I think that's certainly part of the business, but nobody makes you a nice person.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So it's always nice when you meet somebody like that and you know the circumstances and they're still friendly.
Yeah, absolutely. They could be like, no, I don't have time for that, or
right.
To see them engaging,
right.
They truly feel like they're into it, which
right.
is awesome.
Right. Like, leave me alone, kid.
Exactly.
Right. But yeah, like with that, I was the guy who played Bibbo, Charlie Halford. I was looking at him and I said, "Wow, you look familiar." And he said, "Well, he was in the Constantine live action show. He was the cab driver."
Oh, no way.
He was and he was also in True Detective in the first season. I think it was the first season. But he's one of those guys that has that look, and he's 6'6", and this is like, he was very, very cool. I think he could have played. He's the type of guy you could put in a live action movie. He could play Bibbo, but he could also play Lobo. And I was thinking of that. It's like, wow, he's got that right look. You could see him, with the chain and the space bike and everything else, But it was, that's kind of neat, I think. Again, the fact that these people, they're doing the voice work, and they're really kind of committed to it. It's not just like, what do I got?
Take a paycheck.
Right. I think the Lois and Clark, being a married couple in real life, in the cartoons, it helps the intimacy of even though it's a cartoon, they're voice acting, and they're carrying the weight of the emotion in this stuff, because they can't do that subtlety in a cartoon unless you're Disney.
Yeah.
So, but that was kind of impressive. And I don't know if you saw any of the pictures, but Jerry O'Connell had bought the Superman suit with the S shields all over it, which Mitch and I remember Mitch was at like a Kohl's a couple of years ago, and he took a picture and he posted on Facebook. And he said, "Hey, anybody got this, or anybody want this? It's at Kohl's." And it was that same suit, because I think they had done a Batman one as well with bat signals.
Yeah.
So it was funny. And then what we found out was, I said to Jerry O'Connell, was like, it was very form fitting, and I said, "There's no way he didn't have that tailored." But the guy, the Gary Marino, who was the publicity guy for Warner, he had said, "Oh no, Jerry lost weight because he wanted to fit in it for the events."
If that's not dedication, what else?
No, it was funny. But he had a tie, a suit. I mean, I think it was like a 3-piece suit, so it had a vest as well, and he had like some kind of shoes that had red and blue on them too. So when he came through, it was just, clearly he made a splash. But anyways, that's always fun to see the dedication of the, It's not just a job. They're definitely into it, as opposed to someone who's like, "Oh, do I have to do this?" Yeah. So, but that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, Terrificon, guys, is in August. I believe it's the 9th to the 13th.
Definitely for early in August. So.
And I'll put a link and probably throw it up in the video as well.
Cool.
And Jerry, once again, as always, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.